Hello and welcome to Weapons and Warfare for Straight Arrow News. I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and this is not only our final episode of the year, but it's our 50th. With that being the case, we wanted to take the opportunity and do a little looking back at the road we've traveled in 2024, both metaphorical and literal. In January, we launched the series with our first episode in a very short-lived set, but we evolved and eventually took the show on the road with the trips to Denver for the AFA's Warfare Symposium. Then it was on to DC for the Navy League's Sea Air Space Expo. We hit up Fort Worth for our visit to the Lockheed Martin F-35 assembly facility. Then we went to Tampa for Soft Week, before another couple of trips to DC for the AFA's Airspace and Cyber Conference, and then finally the AUSA annual meeting. And there's another trip that I'm not going to tell you about yet because that episode is still forthcoming. But of course, it takes a team to put together a show like this. So we thought it would be fitting to check in with everyone and hear about a couple of their favorite stories from the year. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, I am joined now by the rest of our team, Brady Bunch style. In the top right corner, we have senior producer Brett Baker. Below him is our editor, Brian Spencer. And to his right, your left, senior motion designer, graphic artist extraordinaire, Dakota Patillo. Gentlemen, Quadfathers, welcome back to the show. Before we get started, we have our favorite debriefs kind of lined up. But guys, we're looking back on year one of Weapons and Warfare. So what do you guys think?
It's been really amazing you don't often in your career get a chance to start something from scratch, let alone do it remotely, which is new for kind of everybody. But I think it's been an awesome experience so far, and I'm excited about what we've done and where we're going.
Yeah, there's a lot of military show voices out there, and I'm been real excited to kind of level up that whole conversation and be part of deciphering the world of militaria.
Yeah, I was looking back earlier today at like our back catalog, and it's crazy to see how much content and things we've covered and all that stuff. It was just it's really cool. So it was a great year, and looking forward to some more.
And for those who don't know, I'm just going to kind of give a location. This is a remote show, like we're all remote. Brett Baker, you are in Lincoln, Nebraska. Dakota, you are in Denver. Brian, you are in St. Louis. But every week we work together. We meet on Slack. We collaborate. We make fun of each other. And we shoot ideas up and see what floats, right? So really appreciate all the work that you guys do week in and week out to make this show a reality. The core part of each one of our shows seems like the debrief, right? It's the main part of each one of our shows. And so this episode, we're choosing our favorite debriefs. My favorite debrief that we did, and I'll kind of give you a few reasons why, was the one that we had done on, or had the one we did on, can the U.S. take out all of China's and Russia's nuclear launch facilities within 2 hours? So there's some British researchers who came out with this paper that said that with conventional weapons only, the U.S. can take out all of China and Russia's nuclear capabilities in 2 hours. It seems like a very crazy claim. And so we talked to the researchers. We also talked to a U.S. intelligence officer who sat on the Russia desk. And I thought this story in particular was a great opportunity for us to showcase what we do best, of bringing this world that's, crazy and full of jargon to the average person and making it relatable and the ideas attainable or conceivable and able to digest. I think we did a really good job of that, and we also proved that there is room for debate in this world of weapons and warfare. The United States and its allies have enough conventional weapons and delivery systems to take out all of Russia and China's nuclear launch sites in about 2 hours, at least according to a pair of British researchers behind a newly published study titled Masters of the Air: Strategic Stability and Conventional Strikes. It's certainly a bold claim, so I reached out to Matt Shoemaker, a former U.S. intelligence officer, for some context. your background with your intelligence background, like you were on the Russian desk. So when you see an article that says the U.S. can take out all of Russia and China's nukes in a couple of hours, accurate, inaccurate? What do you think?
The first question I have to ask is, who in the world is claiming this?
That person would be Professor Dan Plesch, who, along with a colleague, authored the Masters of the Air study.
Some years ago, I wrote a piece for The Conversation because I felt rather frustrated about the way the debate was, which has had about 250,000 reads, I think, about a non-nuclear world war, how viable this was, because it seemed to me that conventional counterforce was really the missing link.
Conventional counterforce is the military tactic of using conventional weapons to target an adversary's nuclear weapons. During the Cold War, counterforce was all about using nukes to stop nukes. Today, Plesch says the U.S. has more than enough capability to wipe out both Russia and China's nuclear arsenals without ever needing to use its own nukes. So that was my favorite debrief episode from earlier in the year. Let's go ahead and keep this train moving along. Brett Baker, what was your favorite debrief?
Well, it's kind of hard to pick because we've done a lot of really cool stories. But I think the one that resonated most with me was one that we kind of had an opportunity to explore when we were at Special Forces Week in Tampa. We met a guy named Jared Shepard who started this thing called Warriors Ethos. And what it really is a transition program for veterans, like myself. Now, I was fortunate. I left the Air Force on a Friday and started at a TV station in San Antonio on a Monday. And I didn't have a difficult journey to travel, but that's not always the case. And so what Jared is doing is really cool and inspiring. And, it's helping a lot of veterans who need that next step. But in telling that story, we found a deeper story of one of the guys that he had helped, and maybe one of the last guys you might think would need that kind of assistance in a Medal of Honor winner.
Every year, more than 200,000 men and women leave active duty military service and re-enter civilian life. While most make the move without issue, that's not true for everyone. When Florent Groberg left the Army in 2015, it was not how he planned leaving a career he loved.
I needed to find what my next passion would be.
Started in 2011 by Jared Shepard, himself an Army veteran, Warriors Ethos has helped roughly 2,000 service members take those first steps out of uniform. For Groberg, his circumstances were not all that different from those that had leaned on Warriors Ethos before him, with one notable exception.
The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Captain Florent A. Groberg, United States Army.
For his actions in trying to stop a suicide bomber while escorting a group of coalition and Afghan leaders in the Kunar province of Afghanistan, Captain Groberg received the Medal of Honor. He was also medically retired because of the injuries he suffered trying to save the lives of others.
If you look at all the bad things you ever hear about veterans, homeless, unemployment, divorce, whatever else it happens to be, suicide, those are all failures in transition.
A 2019 study by Pew Research revealed almost half of veterans post 9/11 said readjusting to civilian life was at least somewhat difficult.
Warriors Ethos pushed me in a way that wasn't off-putting. They knew that I had a need and a requirement. I just did not potentially know how to accurately express it at the time. They also understood what type of help I was seeking, and they put a plan together, and we adjusted the plan when things didn't work out the way I wanted it or the way they perceived it. In the end, we found a winning solution organically.
All right, so that was Brett Baker's favorite debrief, the Warriors Ethos. Just a great organization, and really glad we got to meet up with them at Soft Week. And Brett, like you said, being able to share the stories of folks that you might not think need help in that transition process, and that organization being able to help anyone that comes to them. And I hope I'm sure we'll meet up with them again at a future show. Looking forward to seeing them. So now we'll go to St. Louis hitting up the loo. Brian, you're the guy who we give you so much disparate pieces and we say, put it all together. And you do every week. You do a great job of that. So you've been the guy in the trenches for so long, putting together piece by piece all of these shows, all these episodes. So you have more of a firsthand look at some of this than maybe some of the rest of us do. So your favorite debrief?
Well, this one rolls right off the tongue. It's the INJIP, Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program in Texas. Really cool program. First, I think it's just so cool that we get an opportunity to talk to guys like their wing commander, Colonel Schulman, and have access to somebody like that who's just in charge of this really unique program. And the second thing I think that's so unique about this story is, a lot of offices, branches, uh, of our own military, one hand doesn't know what's the other hand is doing sometimes. Yet this program joins 14 NATO countries in Texas, all speaking different languages, and all going for that singular mission of securing Europe or the skies over Europe. And I just think that's really cool that they're able to overcome all the bureaucracy of the militaries of each country and then overcome the language barrier, the culture barrier, and just become the best of friends and have brothers in the sky.
All right, Colonel. So, it started back in the 70s, and you just kind of said it. INJEPT is NATO in Texas.
The German Air Force was training their own pilots here just for airspace reasons and the great weather that we have in the state of Texas. As you know from history, as you hit the 70s and you start to hit the 80s, the Cold War really starts to take shape. A lot of the nations in Europe and NATO were looking around like, oh my gosh, we don't have a strong Air Force and we need to build an Air Force. And so as they looked around in Europe, there's just not a lot of capacity in airspace, and it was really, really expensive to train fighter pilots. And they kind of looked across the world, they're like, wait a second, the Germans already doing this thing in Texas. Can we jump on this bandwagon? And I will tell people it is not a U.S. program with international participation. It is an international program with U.S. participation that happens to be in Texas. And so my job as the NJET wing commander is to represent the 14 nations equally. I do not speak for the United States, right? Because I need to speak for Romania as much as I need to do for Italy, as much as I do the U.S. The partnerships that we make day to day working here to when our students graduate, right, they go off and do big things. They already know how to integrate in a coalition. And as you know, the U.S. doesn't go to conflict alone. We go to conflict with allies and partners. 50% of the U.S. Air Force fighter pilots come through this program. 100% of the fighter pilots for Germany, Denmark, Norway, etc., come through NJEP. If I don't produce them pilots, they don't have an Air Force. As you've seen in the news, what Putin is happening, its importance and relevance, I would argue, is increased to probably where it was in the 80s when it was founded. It probably hasn't seen that spotlight due the recent years, and I guess I could publicly thank Vladimir Putin for making our program a spotlight of the world again.
All right, that was our profile on the INJEPT program, the Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program in Wichita Falls, Texas. Like you, Brian, I was really glad that we were able to get that story and turn that just some behind-the-scenes stuff. So I used to work with a gal at a station in Wichita Falls who is now married to somebody. I'm not going to say his name properly. His call sign is Venom, who works within the INJEPT program, and he was able to put me in touch with the proper public affairs officers and everything. So thank you, Kay Cross. You know who you are, for helping us get that story. Okay, Dakota in Denver. So as our graphics artist, you make our show look better than it should every week. Your ability to kind of take these crazy concepts and make them into just these beautiful illustrations. Really glad that you're working on the show. Glad that we have an opportunity for you to showcase your skills. So on that note, Dakota, what was your favorite debrief this year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't pick based upon what I thought were the coolest graphics, at least not for the debrief. But I picked episode 33, the piece on additive manufacturing, which is basically like industrial 3D printing with like metal, and then you can CNC or lathe that into a finished part. And I just thought it was really cool that we could like resurrect these like ancient pieces of military tech, these planes that have been flying for 70 years that the factories have been shut down for 40 years or whatever, and really make a part that's special for them and not have lead times be months or years or have to spin up a full factory. You can spin up something small and get your part when you need it. I thought that was great, reducing costs, and I think it has tangible benefits for like the real world, like everyday people. When you need 3D printing is so viable, and then if we can move that on to like aerospace or even just a part you need it from Home Depot, kind of thing. You need something custom for your old furnace, things like that. I think it's a really cool practice, and I'm really glad we covered it.
To the casual observer, additive manufacturing might look the same as 3D printing, but there is a slight difference: scale. Essentially, it's the difference between printing a chess piece at home and creating a ball valve destined for a Navy vessel. For example, printing this hunk of metal, then machining it into a finished piece ready to be installed on a submarine. It's the kind of efficiency that's making believers out of anyone involved in the process of getting a boat in the water or an aircraft back in the sky. Meeting those needs is important enough that now each branch of the DoD has ways to take the process out of the factory and into the battle space. For the Marine Corps, that means turning additive manufacturing into expeditionary manufacturing, taking the process to where it's needed the most. The Air Force is getting in on the action too. In 2018, Hurricane Michael flattened parts of Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. The devastation was so complete, the base is still rebuilding much of what was lost. In 2023, that included this printed facility for robotics research. It's the first of its kind on an Air Force base anywhere in the world. The DoD's challenge now is widespread implementation, building the infrastructure that will allow additive manufacturing to shorten supply chains and keep American troops in front of their near-peer adversaries. All right, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, as it's known in the industry. And like you, Dakota, I'm fascinated with that technology. The more widespread we could make it, the more cost-effective it's going to be. I know that the four of us, don't have access, well, at least I don't have access to a 3D printer, but I know we work with folks within Straight Arrow News that do, and they've been able to 3D print some just, off the wall thing like a mask, and I just think like, when's the day going to come where it's like, oh, I need a nail, and I just go to my garage, 3D print it out, and that technology could be down the road very soon because of, the military kind of leading the industry charge to make this cost effective. So Quad Fathers, thank you so much. That's going to do it for our favorite debriefs for this portion of the show. Stick around, though, because up next we have our favorite weapons of the week.